So what average days is how long it takes to solve the puzzle of the market. If you solve the puzzle of the market on day 1, you're done. If you solve the puzzle on the market on day 60, you're also done. But the penalty for taking 60 days in a market that's diminishing is unfortunate. Real estate is tumbling. The value of your property is not compared to last year's comparable. It's this week's price drop. It's really like trying to catch a falling knife.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Welcome back to the Tom Storey Show. Hope everyone is having a great summer. And thank you, by the way, we haven't talked about this yet, Steve. We went past 7,000 subscribers on the show, and we're into the almost 1.5 million total views since we started this thing. So just want to say thank you if you show up here every week. We don't get to see your faces, but we appreciate it. And thank you for being here. And you know who else I'm really thankful is here today is our guest, Taylor Hack. From Hack & Co. Remax Edmonton, Steve's favorite Canadian city. I think Taylor might have sold 500 homes in his first 6 months. I might be exaggerating, but not by that much. One of our favorite people in the industry. I'm excited to have you back on the show. Taylor Hack, how are you?
I'm doing really good, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be rep in Edmonton. It is
two-time runners-up in the Stanley Cup Finals.
You know what? We just like to go now. We just really like to attend.
I'd like to go to the party one day.
I heard that you guys. Would like to come to that party. You guys have seen it from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting
for a
there.
while. Yeah, since 1967. Yeah.
But that's something that's kind of interesting because the three of us have talked over our careers a lot,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's often that it's polarized. I remember talking to you during COVID and you explaining your market. And for me, I had my face pressed against the glass. People in Toronto were so excited about real estate. Also, what we heard is that their parents were excited about real estate. And so there was a lot of people that were essentially helping their children buy at really deep levels. Here's your inheritance early.
Oh, yeah.
And that was something that was interesting for me because at the same time, I was going through one of the roughest experiences ever. I would meet a family that was looking to sell a condo. And I would explain to them that for every buyer in the market, there are 11 sellers. We ended up with a generation of accidental landlords. People that bought condos and then had a family. They needed more space, but it was a situation where they couldn't sell the condo, without essentially taking the down payment away from the house that they would buy because they had to save up a down payment. Real estate went down here every year for over 7 years. And that's something that I couldn't, being in that experience and having those meetings where we would talk to families, it really felt like I would walk into talking to somebody about what their future plans were. And I knew that this was going to be something that was more challenging than they thought. And my understanding is that now you guys are in a similar situation.
Yeah, but we're only about 2.5 years into it. When you were going in to have those conversations, were people aware of how bad the market was over that 7-year period, or was it news to them?
I think that there was a variety of reactions. There's a lot of people that are kind of in and out of touch. Sometimes the people around them that they're talking to aren't in your market, so They're not even having the same experience. So it ended up being a situation where we would really have to approach talking to people in a way that would allow for the people that were uninformed and also allow for the people that were informed. Mm-hmm. Because most of their life, they're getting these adages, you should never sell your property for less than tax assessed value. But they don't really know where that information is coming from. The reason that it's not that you should not accept a price that's lower than your tax assessment. Tax assessment is not an accurate depiction of value, but it is a moment in time. And if your property is worth more on the market, if market value is higher than your tax assessment, you're probably in a seller's market. Whereas if the market value of your property is lower than the tax assessment, you're probably in a buyer's market. So it's an old indicator to say, is this a good year to consider selling? Not when I get offers, they should be north of this number. And you learn things like that when you're in a hard market.
Was it just condos, or was it over that 7-year period? Was it everything? Homes were losing value. Was it everything, or was there like a certain property type that was still okay?
Well, my market is so cyclical. Like normally it's oil, but oil is different than what we were seeing now. So the reason it was so difficult is because in 2015 we went to like record low oil prices from record high oil prices.
Right.
And so when that happened, Edmonton has a very young population. Like our average age is in the early 40s. And a lot of the people that come here, they come here because when oil is up, an electrician can make $250,000 a year. Plumbers become pipe fitters. There's like this whole industry that calls young people to come and make the money that will build their careers and build their lifestyle. And sometimes it's here and sometimes it's somewhere else. The workforce that shows up when oil is high is mostly from Atlantic Canada. We see a whole bunch of Newfoundlanders. But then when oil is down, you can't find them anymore. Like they all leave. And this group is the owners and tenants of apartment style condos, townhouses, and duplexes. And when the market is really has a lot of contrast between buyers and sellers at the base of the market, it means that the property ladder doesn't work. Because if your condo doesn't gain value, then you don't jump to that townhouse or jump to that duplex. And that was actually the situation we were in. So all the verticals were gone in our market, and luxury was rough because of it. Like luxury property sways the most. And I know this is going to blow your mind, but the gateway to luxury in Edmonton, Alberta is about $1 million.
It's the gateway to a maybe livable freehold house in Toronto. Right?
Yeah. But what is it? What is a rent for like a 900 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom where you are?
Condo?
Sure.
So if it's downtown in a 10-year-old-ish nice new condo, 900 square feet, 3,500.
Wow.
Yeah, now there's lots of older condos where it's much less than that, but for like a downtown newer condo, yeah, at least.
Yeah, and we're out in the sticks, and so we're, well, not the sticks, but we're in the suburbs, and then you're anywhere from 22 to 2,600.
So here in Edmonton, you're seeing things that are just under $2,000 that are in reasonably new buildings downtown. Average condo fees $550. So you can see that those building blocks have kind of changed, but our market has been interesting because during that downturn, we saw that there was some people that had options and some people that didn't have options, but many people didn't understand their options. Like I think one of the most difficult things for families to understand is buyer's market and seller's market. Because if you were looking at stocks, they seem to know what to do. You know, when the market's down, buy more. When the market's up, you should sell. But in real estate, normally they look at it per house. Like, oh, I can't sell this house because I'll sell it for less than what I bought it for. Yeah. But it's like, well, you're not actually selling your shares in real estate. You're repositioning them. So if you're upgrading, you are buying more than you are selling. Therefore, you are a buyer in a buyer's market. All of the families should really look at this as the time to upgrade. So if you bought at a time that predates the rise, you probably still have a significant amount of equity. And even though the news is showing you that the general consensus of the public is scared, because the news does not lead the public, the news follows the public. So they know that people are concerned. They know that people will read about that. That's what they print. But I used to think that they were leading it. But then when you went and talked to families, you would find out that they were concerned. That the reason that they weren't ready to move right now is because they thought that the people around them would think they were dumb. But the truth of the matter is that when the market's down and you're upgrading, the gap between where you are and where you're going is smaller. If you were looking at prices that are kind of more applicable to your markets, like maybe you're selling something for $1 million and you're going to buy something for $1.5 million. Well, if the market gained 10%, the $1 million property picks up 100,000. The property up market picks up 150,000. So then when the market's going down, they actually end up losing it. And normally the higher you go, the higher the loss.
In dollars.
Yeah, like once you get into the top of the food chain where you are, like into those $5 and $10 million properties, those ones will sway the most. It's almost like when you balance a broomstick on your hand. When the market goes down, it sways one way. When the market goes up, it sways the other way. But the further up the broomstick you are, the more it sways.
What did those people do? Because that's the big thing we're seeing right now. And I actually just made a video on this. So Taylor, right now in Toronto, of all the condos for sale, there's 3,000 condos for sale that are owner occupied, meaning, someone's living there and they're looking to sell it. Not all 3,000 of them are going to be upsizing to something bigger, but I bet almost half are, because I see it in my business all the time. Sell my condo so I can buy a house. But you can't buy the house until you sell the condo, and selling the condo takes really long. So it's got these people stuck. And I see it in my own comments on this channel and on my main channel, as people go, I will not sell my property for a loss. Like, they just can't mentally do it. And maybe it's because, like you said, they feel like they're stupid or this was a bad decision. And I'm not saying they should or shouldn't, but there's so many people that if they sold for a loss could move up to the house they actually want, if they can afford to do it. Obviously, that has to make sense. But they're just, no, like, I'm going to wait till it gets better. And I keep saying, like, yeah, but if it gets better, the other one gets better too. And the math we just did, like, it's all so obvious, and you'd think it's clear, but it's not.
But Tom, aren't you then seeing, like, if you have an erosion of your future down payment on your lower price property, that's what actually makes the math not work to move up. So of the properties that we have taken off the market this year and they chose not to sell, that was actually the issue, because when then you do the math to go, okay, well, you only got to drop it 30 grand. You're gonna like have when you buy, your purchase is going to come down 60 grand. I'm like, you're doing great. And they're like, yeah, but then when you actually talk to the mortgage broker and you do the math, they needed that extra 30 grand for the down payment. Otherwise they're stuck. Are you not seeing that?
That would certainly exist, but most of the people, that's not the main thing. It's just the not wanting to sell their condo for a lower number than the last sale, which every sale has been. We accepted an offer on something this morning, and I probably had 10 phone conversations. There was like an hour before the deadline on this. We went through every possible outcome, looked at everything, and about 20 minutes before, he's like, I just don't know what to do. And don't you guys find it tough when people say, well, what would you do? And I'm like, okay, well, what I would do in my situation would be different than what he ended up accepting.
That's why
the
we
offer.
have a job. That's why we have a job. Like the amount of times that the client is just looking for permission.
Yeah.
To go, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not our job. We can't tell you what to do. We can give you options, and then you have to make a choice. Most people don't want to make that choice. Most people want to go, well, what's the right thing to do? Right? Because I don't know if they want to just be able to feel more comfortable with it, or if they want to be able to shift the blame in the future if they make the wrong choice and it doesn't work out. Right. But it is so much of what we do is they want to know, the buyer or the seller wants to know that it's okay to proceed. And that's a real part of our job, of which, I mean, we can tell you, hey, here are your options, but we can't tell you this is the best thing. You do have to have some agency as the person in the transaction, and you do have to pick what it is you want to do or the outcome that you want.
There's a lot to unpack there. One would be condos take a long time to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Average days is based on how long, and I see the market as being teams. Each person is a team. Each owner is a team with their agent. So what average days is how long it takes most teams to solve the puzzle of the market. If you solve the puzzle of the market on day 1, you're done. If you solve the puzzle on the market on day 60, you're also done. But the penalty for taking 60 days in a market that's diminishing is unfortunate. It's definitely not days on market that gets you a deal, because if you do the same thing for 60 days, you will not get a deal and you will likely expire. So there's so many people that need to see it more as a package deal. So the first thing is that we need to talk to the people realistically that won't have a down payment if the expectation for the property doesn't meet market value. So in that case, sometimes the conversation is around real estate. Hey, listen, if you were able to save up this much money, you will be in a position to buy, right? If you need that equity out of your current property, well, then it could be a situation where you need to wait. But I often don't tell people no, I tell people when. And then the other side of it is for those finding the group that can win and showing them how to win is pretty much what my career has been made of. It doesn't matter what the market conditions are. There are people that can win, and understanding who the winners are, how to find them, and how to reveal that win is important to those families. So breaking it down and saying like, hey, this is what you want to sell and this is what you want to move to. Now, if your sale value achieved your expectation, what do you think the new house would cost? Like if the market conditions were enough to get you the right amount for your condo, do you think this house would still be the same price? No, it'll move away. You'll need more money. So right now, if you're viewing selling your property less than what you paid for it as a loss, then you're playing checkers instead of chess. Because we can take a small beating on this sale. We can do it together. It's going to suck, but I'll be there. However, after that, we are going to lay a ground pounding up market. We are going to give the biggest beat down. We are going to find the most vulnerable. And we are going to basically make the gain overcome your loss.
So let me give you a seller objection in that conversation. Okay, so Taylor, I know my condo is going to continue to go down in value. Even if I can get a price I'm happy with, yeah, you're right. Mathematically, it would make sense to upsize now. But market's gone down for 4 years for all property types. If I upsize now to something bigger, won't I just lose more if the market keeps going down?
Would the daily experience of that be walking into your kid's bedroom? Now they're sleeping in their own bedroom instead of sharing a room. And they'd be like, you know what, Dad, you lost money again today. Is that what the experience would be like?
Not for me, but I know some people are so like, I guess it's like, would that keep you up at night knowing that that could happen? Or are you at a point in like life is short, buy the heck what you want as long as you can afford it and ride this thing out?
Can I point out right now, this is such a Toronto versus Edmonton conversation because Tom is all focused on dollars and exactly where things should be and how much I need and all this stuff. And Taylor is all, well, do you want a better life or not?
Right.
Right? Because that's what it comes down to. It's like you focus on, and you probably have more of a skill of this, Taylor, of being in that market for so long, but you haven't had to focus on the dollars for that, let's say last 10 years previous to this year or the year before maybe. And you have focused on what are we doing here? We're having a house for our family. Like that is much more of the conversation that you're having.
Yeah, but because of a few things. Like if you were looking at investments, rent and use your money to go make money.
Sure.
But if you're talking about this as a principal residence, then we have to look at it in a different light. A principal residence is partially a consumable. Your family will mile out the inside. It's also a responsibility. There's other factors involved. If someone was just talking about their principal residence only in dollars and cents, well, then they obviously shouldn't care how the kitchen looks, right? They shouldn't care about these other aspects, but they very much do. However, when we go to meet them, we're talking about dollars, so they talk about dollars. And that's the part of the conversation that really needs to change, because these people are not making decisions for dollars. They're justifying what they actually need. So I like to just make the thing simple. And that's actually very much what my province is about. You don't have to put a bunch of window dressing on it. The truth of the matter is the day you buy something and the day you sell something are defining moments, and everything in between is just the place you invite people to join and gather with you.
Realtors, it's time to up your game. Realty Ninja allows you to create a stunning lead capturing and hassle-free website that looks great and will match with your current brand. They are a sponsor of this show, and they're giving listeners 20% off your first year, and you don't pay $1 until you launch. Join the thousands of real estate agents across this country, including Steve, the cheapest person I know that uses their services. realtyninja.com/Tom. And now, back to the podcast. I'm going to put that on a billboard.
Mic drop.
I don't even know how to respond.
You're being Edmonton, I'm telling you.
You know what?
So.
This is the most calm conversation we've had on this podcast in a long time, and I'm really enjoying it. But so Taylor, give me and Steve, but not just me and Steve, but every consumer listening to this in Ontario and BC, that though there were bumps in the road, we had 15 pretty good years of sellers market conditions. We did. There's times in between. Okay,
I'll
fine.
debate that. I'll debate the argument of a 40-year bull run. I'll debate all day long, but okay.
Either way, it's been not what it is now normally in the last little while for not just real estate agents, but sellers, buyers that are nervous that if prices are going down, why should I get in now? What advice can you give people from Ontario and BC that are in a market now that I don't know if it's as bad as it was in Edmonton during those times, but it's much different than we're used to? You know, like you had 10 years of experience having these conversations that are newer conversations, not just for real estate agents in our markets, but for the sellers and for the buyers. You know, just anything you can think of on that side of things.
You really have to separate the noise from what's actually happening, because people are talking about a real estate crash or a real estate correction, but that's a defining, like there's definitions for that. And right now, what we're hearing being outside of those two places is that real estate is tumbling. But when you actually look into it, it's really not. Like the sale values are not near as down as what people say, but the noise is way up. And that's because a lot of the time the noise comes from realtors, and realtors are in pain because they're based on transactions, and transactions are down. But in the stock market, prices go down because people sell things. And in those markets, we have a lot of inventory, but they're not actually selling at massively low values. Like the sellers just won't do it. So unless there's trades, there isn't actually transactions. And a lot of what you're hearing is noise. But inside of that, there is actually information that will help you understand. Like I was listening to Ravi the other day, and he was talking about how the value of your property is not compared to last year's comparable. It's this week's price drop.
Yeah.
And really, I think that sellers need to understand more about the level of competition. If I was selling a property in Toronto or Vancouver and the market is diminishing, I need to stop the clock, which means that I need to get on and off the market very quickly, because the longer I'm on, it's really like trying to catch a falling knife. Like it's very difficult to do. Whereas when you see the market clearly, you can do calculations. Like for example, in my market, a lot of the time, even for single family detached, there was only one buyer for every two sellers. Mm-hmm. And that meant that if you were second place on the podium, you didn't get an offer. Only first place did. And you can look at that in any group of comparables and say, like, listen, compared to all of these other properties, are you the clear winner? Because if you are not, then someone else is going to take your buyer, and next week the price will be lower, and next week the price will be lower. And that's something that we saw when the market was moving up, right? Like if you lose on this multiple and it takes you 6 weeks to find another house, the amount that you would pay more is very significant. Mm-hmm. And it's just that part is in reverse. So those two variables really need to be understood. Is one, if you are an upsizer, it's time to go. We need to jump while the gap is small, and then don't worry about it. Once you've purchased, the big floating numbers over your house are something that you can't see, and neither can anybody else. That's just the place that you enjoy. Based on statistics, Canada's almost never seen a 7-year period where property goes down. My province is the exception. So even though you've been on what Steve would say is arguably a bull run, the truth is that the bull run will come again. So
Yeah.
you just park until that happens, but definitely move up market, because then you're going to have more money in to overcome the loss when it is time to go up. If you wait for that little apartment to appreciate, then in that situation, you're not going to have the right vehicle to pick up the biggest gains as they return.
Maybe where I'm coming from is that I think a lot of this conversation is centered around families or people selling their property to move to another property to live in. But investors were such a large part of our demand in our market for a long time. And investors want typically one of two things, right? They want capital appreciation, they want the asset to increase in value, or they would like some cash flow. We're in a place right now in Toronto that, like, for the next 2 years, unless you're putting 50% down, neither of those things are realistic. So I guess for the families, it's one thing. What would your advice be? I mean, was there a ton of investors in your market during those down years that were trying to make, like, what was it when it is truly just a numbers game, not just, my kid's bedroom, I want my kid to have their own bedroom. It's like, no, this is just, it's an Excel sheet to me. What do I do?
So in that case, there's different places that you're going to be looking for different things. So if you were buying into a market like Toronto for cash flow, you've made mistakes, because the further you go away from major markets, the more cash flow you get. So you buy into Toronto for appreciation. If you're in a lot of pain right now, that means that you bought at the tip, right? You bought it. You didn't buy before that. And that's like the weathering of the storm, which is something that most investors have to go through. So if this is your first storm and you entered at the time where you are taking the biggest pain, you have lessons to take out of this, and it's very likely your ability is going to be limited. So you will have to shelter from the cash flow negative while you wait for the appreciation promise, which was the original idea behind it. But that's only for informed investors. For the majority of people, they bought something because their friends said it was awesome. And I can tell you this, if your friends in the general public are talking about any investment, it's far too late. That's like the indicator to sell.
Steve, we were having a conversation the other day, and this just comes back to the cash flow side of things. Typically you buy a property as an investment, and when you're looking at cash flow, it's like, okay, my mortgage payment is this. Maybe if it's a condo, I got strata fees, condo fees, I got my property taxes, insurance. And you would add those all up and then compare it to the rent, and that would tell you, are you cash flow positive or negative? Steve, tell me the recent conversation you had on the mortgage side of things, because I thought that was kind of interesting, coming from not a realtor's perspective, but a consumer's perspective.
Yeah. Oh, I think it was more just a seller trying to justify why they want a certain price in a market that is not going to bear that price. And it was basically the argument coming from the seller of who did not want to listen to where market value probably is, or probably should be, and where we should list is, I was like, well, they're going to be cash flow negative. Any investor that's going to buy your product is going to be cash flow negative. And it's an investor style product. So as a result, he's like, well, what do you mean they're going to be cash flow negative? And I said, well, we're going to break down these costs. And I broke down the costs, and I broke down the rents coming in, and I broke down all of the different property taxes and everything. And I just said, so if they're going to put down 30 to 35%, they're still going to be negative $300 to $500 a month on this place. And he's like, well, is that including interest and principal, or is that, like, your mortgage payment seems high to me? And I was like, yeah, well, that's obviously principal and interest. And he's like, well, you can't consider principal as being a negative cash flow, right? And, like, if you're paying towards it, he's like, your only cost is interest. And I'm like, well, yeah, but that's not how the cash flow works.
I mean, he's
right?
not arguably wrong.
But that's how that correct. If you're seeing appreciation.
Yes.
But in a market where nobody wants to buy a negative cash flowing, depreciating asset, That makes no sense. The whole plan at that time was, if I'm going to negative cash flow on this $500 a month, it's hopefully gaining between 5 and 6% per year. And then I don't mind, right? That was the whole thing. So it was an argument. I was messaging with Tom, because I was just like, I can't believe the arguments that I'm getting from sellers that just don't want to hear it. Right? Like, they're just trying to justify where they need to be. And this particular guy I didn't feel great for him, because he's owned a property for a long, long time and it hasn't gone up in value. Remarkably not gone up in value compared to others. And I'm just like, sorry, you kind of, as you're kind of alluding to, is the stock market, you kind of picked the wrong stock, right? Like, you picked the wrong building. It wasn't a good investment that you made at the time. And you didn't know that then, but we know it now. And now, if you want to get out from under it, this is the price you need to be at. And then you got to go through the mental gymnastics of dealing with a seller that doesn't want to hear what they're really going to sell for, or how low their value of their asset really is.
I think that most people need contrast in order to make decisions. And so, looking at it from a buyer's perspective, I've yet to meet a buyer that says, hey, listen, how much can I pay for this to make sure that the seller's okay?
Yeah, right.
Right? If I was a fisherman, I'd want to know a lot about fish. And as an agent, I know a lot about buyers. And what buyers ask us is always the same thing. Hey, realtor, what's best juice for squeeze with this amount of money? And if we were to analyze that in this situation, we could lay out whatever this guy's argument is, we could just lay it out. Okay, if you don't want to include principal or so on, we won't include it on these other ones. But basically, of the options available to buyers, why would they choose this at the price that you're suggesting if you yourself don't care about what happened to the seller that sold it to you? So if they're not going to, the only person that's going to care about your outcome is me and you. And the truth of the matter is that buyers coming in are going to be saying, hey, what's the best juice for squeeze? And if we price it according to what you need, they're just going to move around you. In fact, you're very likely going to be the bridesmaid to someone else's wedding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's frustrating just from a real estate agent's point of view, because when we're talking to a seller, we have to be realistic with them. But then the seller they're trying to talk to us like we're the buyer and we should pay more. And we're not. We're the agent on their side. But we also then have to bring to them, like, I make it very clear when I'm in a listing appointment, like, listen, I'm going to tell you the negatives about your property now, because I don't want them to hit you in the side of the face when an offer comes. So these are the objections we're likely going to get. To be clear, I'm not going to go to the buyer and tell them these objections. That's up to them to decide, right? I'm on your side. But I have to make you aware of them now, so you're not broadsided by all of these negative factors that I know these buyers and buyers agents are going to bring up. So they view us as adversarial. I saw it just in the comments yesterday, Tom, on the channel. Somebody's, talking about how realtors are just prepping their clients to sell for less now. It's so hilarious that realtors. It's like, that's actually the regular market that we were in. And then when the market goes hot, it's, wow, realtors are telling their buyers to pay too much. It's like, no, we're just trying to tell you how to go through the market. You need to realize that we are on your side, and that this conversation that we're having right now that's very tough about how your property isn't worth the value that you think it is, I'm not sharing that with the other side, right? It's like going to court. You better know what the other side is going to argue against you. You're not going to stand up and go, oh yeah, by the way, he's right. But you better be prepared for those arguments when they come.
I tell sellers all the time, I need ammo. I know these questions will be coming. What's the ammo? Let's take a look at what our responses are going to be to these things.
Well, don't you know my seller needs this much to get out?
Well, that's not good ammo, though. This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Carson Dunlop. Real estate agents, you spend months, if not years, earning your clients' trust. You don't want to lose it on inspection day. For over 45 years, top agents across Canada have relied on Carson Dunlop for home inspections that are clear, calm, and client first. Their inspections don't just find issues, they know how to explain them in a way that will protect your client and your credibility. If you haven't worked with Carson Dunlop yet, now is the time to find out why Canada's best trust Carson Dunlop for home inspections. You can learn more at carsondunlop.com. I will also tell you, in the Toronto real estate market, whenever I see a pre-home inspection by Carson Dunlop, I know my buyers can trust it. And Carson Dunlop is a company we've used so many times over the years for our buyers and sellers. carsondunlop.com. And now back to the podcast.
Yeah, there's something that's also interesting in that, because I think that people in that position look at us like, no, your job is to convince them to give me what I want.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's like, well, if I could get 10% more than the market for properties, I wouldn't work for the public ever again.
Mm-hmm.
I'd do it over and over again for me.
For myself, yeah.
Yeah. So when we look at that, like, that's something that maybe people don't understand, is if you have a great agent, you will have very low risk of not realizing market value. If your agent's qualification to work with you is being the friendliest person at your barbecue, then get ready, because you are probably not going to realize market value. You are going to be one of those listings that ends up 75 days on market, no price change. And I can tell you that the likelihood that you actually get an offer in that position is inside a fraction of a percent. And that's something that I knew in my market as well, is anything that went 60 days without a price change was dead in the water. It was literally just clutter.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to know the math on that. Like, how many properties on market after 60 days actually sell? It's probably very, very low.
Without a price reduction.
Without a price reduction. They just ride it out.
Yeah, it's almost nothing.
What percentage actually sell? And of the small percentage that sell, what actually got asking price? I don't know.
Nothing.
That'd be interesting. Well, I'd have to do the math in Toronto. I don't know the answer, but
we're starting to see,
nothing.
This is actually something I'm struggling with right now with days on market. So it was always, in my estimation, when the market was hot, it was up to 14 days. If you don't have an offer, something's wrong. And then realistically, it's 21 days. So I usually say, at 21 days, we know where we're at. If we've got offers, if we've got showings, if we've got no showings, we know where we're at. 21 days. Now the stats are starting to show that the average days on market are closer to 35. So maybe I'll ask this to you guys as like a legitimate advice. Should I then be telling my clients, hey, we should put off this price reduction from the 21-day mark because the average days on market is now out another 14 days?
But you got to look at those average days on market is for the properties that actually sold, obviously. How many of those that actually sold that are making up those average days on market made a price reduction before they sold?
I thought average days on market included all properties, even the ones that expire or terminate. It's just a cumulative days.
Not in our market. Days on market only tracks sold in our market.
Because we take a look at days on market for sold, and then we take a look at days on market holistically. And that
we only have
also
sold.
Why you guys sound so fast by comparison. Because like my average days on market right now is in the 40s, but it also includes the stuff that just hangs out.
Yeah, we don't have that.
Yeah, the other thing that's fairly new to us is cumulative days on market. That's only been in the last couple of years. And
When you
also
relist-
even properties showing as pending on MLS is only a few years old here.
Oh, yeah, we just got it this year. We're just fresh to we have now a differentiation between closed and pending, basically. As before, it was just sold like on the firm date, right? Conditions are off, it's sold. Well, now we actually have a pending.
You have a closed?
Yeah.
Ours doesn't switch to closed. I mean, you can look at the closing date, but it just
our
it's
new
sold.
system after the deal. Well, we can also go to under contract now, which is cool. Never do it, but
like sold conditional.
Yeah,
we do that all the time.
But now, when the sales actually firm, it will add in the subject removal date. So you'll be able to see how long the conditions were for other sales, and then when it goes. When it closes, the closing date then populates as well. So you can then determine how long it is to negotiate from accepted offer to conditions to actually close. So there are actually some pretty cool tools that you can use. I don't know if it would really sway my opinion on a market analysis, how long conditions were, but it would be interesting to see if that the condition period is getting longer. Because I was talking to Tyrell in Kelowna the other day, and he was saying in Kelowna it's not uncommon to have 21-day conditions. And I'm like, 21-day conditions?
What are they doing?
Exactly. What are you doing? Taking a vacation for the first 2 weeks of your condition removal time and then coming back and dealing with it?
Does your mortgage broker use an abacus?
Taylor, what's the average? And we'll get to, by the way, that your market is actually very hot right now and has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But what was the average inspection, financing, status review condition in Edmonton until more recently, where there's less conditions? I'm guessing.
Yeah, normal was always like 10 or 12 days.
Oh, so
I'm not
that's
talking business days either. I'm just talking total days.
Yeah, that's about what we're at now.
We were normally 5 business days for a typical resale. Actually, recently I've had several offers for condos, and we were always a 5-day financing condition. Not always, but and there's 7 now. And I'm like, what's going on? Why is there 2 extra days? No.
What is happening to the market in Toronto?
It's nothing to do with the market.
30% more days.
Apparently, the banks are basically just like, you need to give us 7 days now. It's mostly TD, I'm hearing, is saying this. And the mortgage brokers then relaying that. I'm like, well, we all know how it works. By day 4, when it's actually at the top of their desk, that's when they do it. And they're just pushing 2 more days on now.
Taylor, you're totally right. If City TV or CBC or somebody listens to this, then a week after this is out, we're going to see a report that says financing on new home construction takes 30% more time. Something stupid like that. Okay, I want to transition here. You have now then experienced the exact opposite of everywhere else in Canada, so it appears, or at least if you read the headlines. So you've gone now from, sure, you had some COVID times, and I'm sure the market picked up and that sort of thing. But rumor has it that 2025, like Edmonton is the spot to be, and it's all roses and sunshine over there right now. The roses might be frozen half of the year, but it is roses and sunshine over there. So explain to me this last 6-7 month period, maybe even a year period, and why Edmonton has bucked the trend and what that experience has been like of coming out of what felt like maybe 10 years or more of down.
Yeah, I'm super old. And what I mean by that is I've been in the real estate industry now for 20 years. I did mortgages for 8. I've done real estate for 12. And a brief history of our cyclic market is like in 2005 and 2006, our market went up an amazing amount here. Like houses appreciated by 50% in this, what we called the boom. And then we went into the US financial crisis. We had a rally with oil where we almost, for most properties, hit that high water mark going into 2014. But then in 2015, we had a combination of oil going down and also a provincial government that wasn't interested in looking at alternatives. And in that case, we just got stuck. So property went down 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Everybody else found that real estate was consuming the money we normally spend on travel and entertainment during COVID, right? Like also people had to change because they were overinvested in location because they weren't driving to the job they used to go to. And they were underinvested in characteristics because now the kids had to do school from home and work from home and they didn't have spots for that. So we saw this huge shuffle, right? But not here. Here we literally saw the worst condo market we've ever seen. Then as interest rates went up in 2022, the first half of 2022 was fire here. And it was a very specific fire that was up over average price. It was houses, and it was not really expensive houses, but the above average stuff, because a lot of families were doing that upgrade to lock in their mortgage before the mortgage went up. But then the second half of 2022 was lame. In fact, it had this massive drop off. But all of a sudden in 2023, people started moving to Alberta. Our government was paying them. You could move to Alberta and get subsidized. They changed some of the rules about who could move here. Like both of you live in provinces where they're very much set up to help new Canadians. We're not set up for that. You guys are the point of entry. And so they actually didn't allow anybody that was new to Canada to relocate to Alberta unless they had a journeyman ticket. So we had a filter against who was coming into here, and now that filter is gone. So really, since 2023, we've had 200,000 new residents. In Q3 alone last year, we got 10,000 new Edmontonians into a city that's roughly 1 million people.
Are they coming from other places in Canada or new to Canada to Edmonton?
The vast majority is BC and Ontario, and we've never seen that before. Right? Like Steve's a great example. I think that if we told Steve right now that he was going to end up in Alberta, it'd be a really rough day for him. Because a lot
Edmonton
of the people,
totally,
they look at Alberta and they're like, holy crap, how did we end up here? But the reason they ended up here is because this is the last place that you can get a house with a garage and a yard and a vacation all at the same time. The average income in the greater Edmonton area is pretty close to $100,000, which is actually similar to other major markets. But the average house here is only 4 times the average income, and the average house in both of your markets is closer to 9.
Right.
So the big question that we have is, what the hell do you guys eat? You know, like even when you take a look at the cost of food, the cost of getting a beer, income tax, there's so many things that are limiting factors, and we get it. You know, living next to the water is nice. The other thing that's kind of weird is across Canada, 80% of the population lives within 200 kilometers of the US border. It's like looking at seals on a beach. And here we are in Edmonton, the furthest north in North America that you can find more than 1 million people at once. We are even as far as being north to places like Helsinki and St. Petersburg. But this is a vibrant young community. Like the stuff that happens here is tuned towards those like early 40s because they're the majority. People have cash to spend here. Most of us take flights for vacations instead of drives for vacations. It's a different experience. And then you also get opportunities to get some real high earners from a group like Blue Collar that normally doesn't have that. And then on top of that, when you take a look at the rules and regulations, there's something that's awesome about rednecks. Redneck regulation resistance. You can evict people here yourself. You can change things to do with your rent. There are no rent controls. We are the most landlord-friendly province, full stop. So there's so many reasons that people basically looked past us before. And even when the people from BC and Ontario decided that things were so difficult when interest rates went up, when they had condos that with $9,000 mortgage payments, then they for the very first time, looked at the brochure of Alberta. And I can tell you that Edmonton does not look like Calgary. Calgary has the gateway to the mountains, right? They have Stampede. There's white jobs there. There's a whole bunch of things that attracted people. So most of the people that came to Alberta went to Calgary first.
Yeah.
And for most of my career, Calgary has, like a typical house in Calgary has only been about $100,000 more than a typical house in Edmonton. It's 50% more now.
Yeah, because they saw the boom.
So the flow has changed from Calgary to Edmonton. And that's why this year we are the hottest place out there. And when we talk about being hot, now I know that some of the things I do are not common, but I've had 57 offers on one property. I put 205 groups through a single house in 5 days, which meant there was a lineup in front of that house for a fair amount of the time.
Let me just ask you what a comment is already being written. How much under the value did you price that house to get that many offers?
2 pre-approval pools.
What does that mean?
Sorry, I don't understand. I'm trying to do the math. I don't know.
Yeah, so basically in markets where the average is $1 million, pre-approval pools are in $50,000 increments. I did about $150 million in mortgages before I did real estate, and I have abnormal pattern recognition. So what I see is that the number of offers impacts the total outcome. And so what you find is that most agents know what to do when there's 5 offers or when there's 7 offers, but then put them in at 25, put them in at 46, put them in at 57. Their playbook is gone. And most buyers navigate the market by being afraid of missing the one and paying too much. But when the focus is very deeply on missing the one, paying too much becomes kind of less concerning. When I work for sellers, my job is not a caretaker for the market. My job is to win for my sellers. When I work with buyers, my job is to win for my buyers. If you are on the other team, that's the way I see it. So looking at these, the idea would be is how do you actually sell for over the competition? So when you see the comparables, most agents accidentally go into multiple offers because they price with yesterday's comparables and the market has more demand. So today's price puts them into these multiple offers where they see somewhere between 3 and 5 offers. When you can recognize that, anytime that there's a pattern, there's a disruption that's available to you that can give you a massive effect. And that's what we noticed. So we had a property, and this might be surprising. 1,100 square foot buy level. That's just a principal residence, no suite in the basement or nothing, in one of the lower value communities on the south side in Edmonton. And the comparables for it were around 410 to 420. Okay. We ended up pricing that property at $375,000 and getting about $480,000. So doing things like that is not easy. Some people say, oh, you sold a house in a weekend. Yeah. But we had 700 agent communications in one weekend.
Yeah,
we received 46 offers, which is somewhere around 800 pages of reading. Most agents don't even have the equipment to be able to execute on that. And I built a machine that does it. So you can choose how you compete. And really, when you're in a seller's market, most of my clients, when they sell, I have to go help them buy. So my job is to develop the war chest it's going to take to compete on the buyer side. And just like when you're in a buyer's market, the advantage is on the buy side. So you've got to step carefully when you're on the selling side, and then you got to carry a big stick on the buying side. And in my market, it's just reverse. We have to be very careful when we're buying things. We have to be careful about being swept in and overpaying. We need to be able to see the market clearly. But on the seller side, we have a huge stick.
For tenant, landlord, or homeowner insurance policies, go to squareone.ca/The Tom Storey Show. Use the link in the description. Save $20 when you start your free quote right now.
Some of the things that when the market was hot here, when you'd make an offer on a house, you'd do a really tight irrevocable and be like, you got 2 hours to respond to this to try to put the pressure on the seller. And that would work once in a while. Long weekends, Fridays of long weekends, we would scoop up houses at what I thought in those market conditions were good prices that they would have gone for more. But what else are you doing now on the, experiencing this competitive buyer side? We used to actually tell buyers, in this hot market, I'm going to give you 3 prices. This is the, if you're the only offer price. This is the, if you're competing with between 1 and 3 offers. And then anything, this is my sleep at night price. It really should not go over this. And if you pay over this, I'm giving you my advice, but that's what I believe, right? And when it got crazy, the math equation we would do, and I'm not saying that this is the same, but in Toronto, we would usually get pretty close. And it was every offer on a property, you would add 2% to the value over the asking price. The asking price might be below real value. And we go, okay, 7 offers, do the math on a price. And it would usually land within 10 to 20 grand of where it actually sells. Now, these are things that don't matter anymore for us, but we went through this forever, and now you're going through it.
But these mechanics that you have can be used in different ways. So one, that's an exceptional move. So understanding the market enough and also testing so that you know your theory is correct is really key to doing well. and you were able to view the number of our offers as live market data to tell you how much below market value list price was.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you, I gave my clients a safe number. I always give them a safe number. Hey, if it gets more zesty than this, let's go find something else. These are things that work. Now, you could reverse that and say, okay, for every direct comparable to our seller, you have to be this far below them to be appealing to a buyer.
Right.
So you can do those same calculations in other ways. Do you remember when I came to Toronto? Remember when
like
I came
most
and hang
recently
out at your office
at our
your
meeting?
meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like what year was that?
Is that 2 years ago?
23?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's because I saw my market changing and I knew that your market already had evolved strategies. So I came and I met with top agents, including you. In fact, a local broker filled an entire golf course with top teammates for me to spend some time with. And it was great because now here I have a hot tub time machine. I went other places to find advanced strategies, and now I'm competing with an agent base where there's only 13% of us that have been in real estate for more than 5 years. And we're in a seller's market that hasn't been seen here for a decade.
I'm having all these flashbacks on what my real estate life used to be when we'd have the live offer trackers that only me and the clients could see, and you'd update it in real time. And it was the best way to, though, I mean, that stuff me and Taylor talked about when you had never had that before. It's like, well, here's what we're doing, and our clients love it. We don't have to do that anymore because it's just
I always
not a
do
thing.
that with my friends. You know, like I say, like I see what you're working on, and it doesn't apply to me, but I can contribute. And we often create things, and then I go back to my lame market, and I like, all right, well, this is just going to sit in the shed and collect dust, you know, because I didn't have the same experience. But now we're seeing, and it's interesting because the people that are coming from your market, even though they're selling houses that average at like 1.6 million, they're not buying that here.
Right.
They're coming here and buying like $500,000 or $600,000 houses, which meant that our market really heated up in the middle. And the bottom of our market is still damaged from 2015. So the heat had been translating down. Like first houses got hot and duplexes got hot.
Yeah.
But townhouses were still going to be longer average days on market and less likelihood to sell. But last year it changed. At the beginning of 2024, these townhouses were basically still in a buyer's market. And by the end of last year, the townhouses had gone into a seller's market because the property above that had appreciated so much, the bottom group had to move to those. And now that's about to happen with apartment style condos. Yeah. But this was things that you could see in advance. So we actually had real estate investment trusts come into Edmonton and buy $40 million worth of condos in one fell sweep, even though this particular group had never owned a single thing outside of BC in their entire existence. And the most interesting part of that was 2 years ago, and the average was $106,000 a door, which is the very bottom of our market. So they bought 40 million at the very bottom because it diversified their risk and it approached the most damaged properties in our market economically, because now that has become a superpower called affordability. And you can move here to Edmonton and you can get a house with a garage in a neighborhood that has a lot size that's like 500 to 600 square meters. You know, like everyone has a yard here. It's really interesting to see that because we're one of the lowest population densities in North America. And that's incredibly attractive.
Do condos ever pick up though? Like even right now, are condos sellers market in Edmonton? Like where's inventory at for condos?
Condos would be just below a balanced market. There's still technically a buyer's advantage.
Interesting.
Do you think that's going to change? Do you think that's going to actually
turn
in the next little bit? Because that's actually the point of where I bought my last investment property, where detached was going crazy, and I'm like, I know what's coming next. So that's actually when I pounced, and it's turned out to be an amazing investment. I actually bought it 100% financed. It was cash flowing since day one. Like it was a really good opportunity, and then it dried up extremely quickly. So you think that's coming? You think do Edmontonians or new Edmontonians or whoever, will they look at shifting to apartment living for affordability?
They'll have to because of affordability. So the more that those other units pick up traction, the further that they go up in price. And if you don't have the money to buy them, you have to buy something else. Like I was talking to my friend Andy the other day, and he's the number one agent in California working out of Silicon Valley. And he told me that he sold a $30 million house. And I was like, where do you find the buyer to a $30 million house? He's like, easy. Find somebody who can't buy a $40 million house. So you see how even at the top of the food chain, that really pushes people around. And at the bottom, it's going to be the same thing. So rent is up massively here. The groups that are coming here are buying up market, which is causing that part to rise and forcing the play further down market. That really affected townhouses. So I have an entire generation of my clients that we call accidental landlords. And that's because they had to move to raise their family and they still own these condos. And that group has been ringing my phone off the hook. And I'm saying, listen, all the chapters in this book have sucked. They've been awful. The best chapters are now coming. Are you really wanting to get off the bus? I want your family to do well. This will be as good as it was bad, and it'll take half the time.
Yeah, we saw that.
Yeah,
we saw that for
so
sure. We saw the people that as soon as they broke even, they were out. If they waited 6 more months, they would have made 50% more.
Oh, I know.
And it was you went too far. So I just have one last question before we wrap for you. Tom might have one too. Are you now looking at what's happening to our markets and prepping for that in another 2 years from now?
No.
Why not?
The way that inflation works, and that's what really affected your markets, is it pools. And it pooled in your markets deeply. And it didn't translate to ours. And it's going to translate a bit now, but it's going to be eroded in that translation. So it was a direct impact to your market, and it'll be like a tertiary or maybe even further down effect in our market. So that by the time it gets here, it'll be very diluted by comparison.
Did Edmonton and Calgary, the way I'm trying to think about this is let's say we had a chart in 2020 and it just showed all the major cities in Canada and what the average or median sale price was. Now, if I brought that same chart up right now in the summer of 2025, what we will have seen is that the prices have gone up in Calgary and Edmonton and Winnipeg and a few other markets, and they've come down. And I feel like the numbers have just moved from one side of the chart to the other side of the chart. So it's your market, arguably, and Calgary has not gone up because locals got better paying jobs, maybe, right? When oil was really good, has it not just been Ontario and BC money moving across the country? Is that not what's kind of happened?
100% that's what's happening, but it's almost like water. So water will eventually find that lowest point, but during that process, it will evaporate. And that's what we're seeing is that the erosion of the sale values that people are getting when they're selling right now from what you guys had previously, that money has disappeared, right?
Yeah.
And so then they're translating what's left over to our market, but by a fraction. So that's what I mean, where it really dilutes the effect. But yes, that this is basically the inflation settling out after it had its primary impacts.
Final question. I'm going to go a little bit off topic here because I know, Taylor, you're more involved in this stuff. Just give me a 2-minute update on AI in 2025 and how you think it actually impacts the real estate industry.
I think that artificial intelligence overall, what people are talking about right now is how scary it is, right? They're talking about how they're worried about it taking over and so on. I'm someone who's very involved in that, and the way that I see those warnings is the same as the Y2K bug. Remember when we were all afraid that when the clock hit 12 and it turned to the year 2000 that the whole world was going to fail? Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are the same people, by the way. They're just a new generation of them screaming. Right now, artificial intelligence isn't artificial intelligence. It's a different way to navigate the internet. It's basically a robotic librarian. And it's a decent librarian, but it's in a shitty library because it was created by all of us. So the worst information out there, the best information out there is all readily accessible to these librarians that you send out into the world looking for answers without context. Now, they also think that we are going to move from a library to understanding because that's what they think with humans. But the truth is that understanding came first, and then we created the library to communicate the understanding to others. It didn't make them smarter. It just made them more informed, but with humans, it kind of maybe. So they're going about it the wrong way. I think, therefore I am. It's not I am, therefore I think.
I saw a
So
study.
that's like the high level outside of it.
Yeah.
But on the inside, look at it like the lie that your teachers told you. None of us will have a calculator in our pocket as adults. Right? These are the people that are talking to you about fear now. It's the same authority. And the students now are being told that you won't have artificial intelligence to research things in the future. But Einstein once said that I will never memorize anything I can look up because it's a waste of space and time. And the truth is that having this fast recall is going to be an advantage. It's very unlikely that you are going to be effective against the people that are using this. Just like imagine navigating the world right now without a cell phone. A cell phone is like having an extra arm. Artificial intelligence is arguably having a second head. Computers are really good at things that we suck about. They're good at memory. They're very now. But when it comes to real estate and the value proposition, they've been trying to remove realtors from this for a long time. But in every industry, consumers are looking for the same thing. Awesome and now. Computers are really good at being now, but up to this point, they totally fail to be awesome.
I think we're going to wrap it right there. That was perfect. Taylor, I appreciate you.
I want to point out one thing. Hang on.
Yeah.
Tom was like 8 years old at Y2K, so I just want to point that out. My daughters are older than Tom was in Y2K.
I remember I was in Jamaica at a New Year's party, Y2K, 8 or 9 years old. Yeah.
Oh, that's a fun thing.
Well.
You know where I was? I was at the Kiss concert in Vancouver waiting for the lights to go out. I was like, this is it. I'm at the Kiss concert. It can all fall in on my head right now. Didn't happen.
Taylor, where were you?
Didn't happen. I would have been at that was actually kind of like a really weird part of my life. So the people that I was hanging out with a fair amount of them are in jail now. So I was in an interesting place.
Okay, you can tell us when we stop recording. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll put Taylor's information down below if you're looking for a great real estate agent in Edmonton. If you listen to this conversation, I don't need to tell you. You can already tell he knows exactly what he's talking about. Taylor, thank you for doing this. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. And we will see you next week. Bye.